But in the book, you had a little story about throwing a PlayStation in the pool and letting your son go get it in freezing water. And I told my kids and they were horrified. And I'm like, I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's consequences. And maybe if our children knew that there were consequences to their actions, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in whether we're talking about the president doing certain things that he shouldn't be doing, or corporate, or Sam Bankman-Fried, or Silicon Valley Bank. There's actually consequences to your actions. So just share that story with the listeners. And I just love the story. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I could see where he's coming from. That is really effective, but entertaining to say the least.
Yeah. So real quick on what you said about consequences. So a core fundamental principle for me as a parent is to make sure that their life is commensurate with their skill and effort. So I can give my kids gifts and things like that, but you see children getting spoiled all the time, especially from affluent families, or when they perceive they're affluent. And that spoils them. And I describe it's like, well, there's an obstacle course before your children. There's an obstacle course between them and their passion and purpose. And it's kind of like, from a spiritual belief for me, it's like something pretty big, put that in front of them to develop them into their highest level of self as an individual and as a member of a team. Now, an obstacle course, like on the SEAL obstacle course, when I remember going through it, I remember like, man, this is so cool. I'm like getting faster and I'm getting tougher. Because you're always getting knocking into things, you know what I mean? It's a pretty rigorous thing. And I'm like, man. And then I was to the point like nothing even hurts me on this thing. Now, what I see a lot of parents do is they don't allow their kids' life to match up with their skill and effort. So they're lifting them up and over the obstacle course and just totally, I want to think of just the nastiest word I can think of, just atrophying every muscle, every bit of courage, every bit of confidence, and just destroying their children. And then we see those kids just sitting at home, just making up whatever they need to make up so they don't have to get off the couch. So there's a thing people say the punishment should fit the crime. Well, no. In the world of behavior science, the punishment or the reward should fit the desired behavior. So the punishment should fit the desired behavior, and it should fit the child. Some children could not handle anything like that. That would be abusive. That could be horrible. So you can't say as a parent to one other parent like, oh, you should spank their butt. Or so my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, like she's gone a little hysterical on me twice, and one time I just like whacked her butt. But I know her. You know what I mean? We have a relationship. It wasn't a physical strike. It was me going, popped her on the butt, like, hey, it's okay. And she's like, oh yeah, thank you for that. You know what I mean? It really has to fit the child. And
if you change your state, that's exactly what you did. You're just changing the state, or you're changing her physiology for that second is basically what you're doing at that moment. And she can handle it. Some other kids cannot handle it. They be more sensitive, or you don't have that relationship and they just take it a different way. I agree.
100%. Just like a guy in the locker room, like, hey, buddy, good game, smack him on his butt. Could be really appropriate and even loving for one guy. And another guy, you could be like, dude, you just touched me. you know what I mean? Anyway, so I'm kind of unpacking this one. So let's come back to that story. So, yeah, so my son, I came home. He had done what he did. And I was like, okay, let's go. Grab your skateboard, grab your PlayStation, and meet me in the backyard. And what he was doing is he was like being a little obstinate. Like he didn't want to communicate with his father. The mood wasn't there. And I'm like, okay, I need to shift the environment here. So first, let's communicate since we're not talking right now, since we're sub-language, you know what I mean? Since you've decided to go below the line, and somebody can make a good case for waiting until he was above the line, but I don't know. Sometimes it's like consequences are coming right now, so you know exactly what they're connected to. Brought him out there, threw it in the pool, made him go get it. He grabbed the stick for the pool, and I'm like, no, with your body, go get it. So he did all that. He was still there. I'm like, I can tell. I'm like, all right, you're not cracking. So I took his skateboard. We have side like rock scape around the pool and everything, and just smashed it. Well, not violent, not in a way that would scare him, like he thinks his dad's losing it. I was very calm, and I'm like, okay, like a SEAL instructor would do that. They would do that to your helmets all the time. They just start smashing it, and he's brought up with all those stories and SEALs around him. And Did some damage to the skateboard. I'm like, those things are now gone. He still wasn't there. And I'm like, you know what? The problem is he's not connected with his dad right now. Like we don't, like if you go back to a dog analogy, that little shock collar, right? Nobody put a shock collar on your kid unless you think it's funny. But that little shock, I mean, you can have fun with it. But that little shock collar with the dog, what it would do is it's caught up in its world and its emotion in a squirrel or whatever it is. So it's like, hey, hey, this is, I am stepping in as your father, not your friend. Like, this is now how this is going to go. Like, you did things, and now this is what it looks like afterwards. So, my favorite part of the story was it wasn't working. So, there's a trail by our house, lots of hills and trails by our house, and it was night. It was dark at this point. So, I said, okay, let's go. Grab your stuff, put on your shoes. We're going up into the trails. So we got there, and he's kind of hanging back because he's mad at dad, or he's, you know what I mean? He's not feeling the vibe. So I'm like, okay. So I went up the trail and I just kind of ran into a little trot, and the lights from the streets all went away. It got dark, and he did what he had been conditioned to do. So all of their life, I've taken them rock climbing, nothing crazy extreme, by the way, people, kind of like normal family, just doing some stuff that would that would have anyone concerned with their survival. I've been out in the ocean. I've been in the pool. I think this is in the book. Like I put them in many situations where they're like, I need to look at dad. Like this is a little sketch. I'm not like something's feeling a little bit off. I need to look to dad right now. This makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I just used that tool. I used that relationship with him. And I'm like, I went up and started getting a little dark. And guess what he did? My little son just right up next to me, arm around him. And then we started to have a good conversation about what was going on. Really
wow,
important.
That's amazing. It's amazing that you kept doing something else, because a lot of times parents, we give up so fast because we're frustrated, and we do react by emotion at times as well because we don't know what to do. We don't know why it's not working. We get to the point where if our kids are misbehaving, it's our fault. We put it on ourselves, and then we get angry at them. When a lot of times, because I've done this before, where I'm like yelling at the kids and they're looking at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually feeling at fault because I didn't teach them properly. I didn't actually teach them this, whatever it was that I was getting mad at. But I do love the fact that you kept trying things, because a lot of us just give up. We get mad, we have some kind of consequence, and then we go back to whatever we're doing and we ignore the problem, which I'm 100% guilty many, many times. But I do love how you tried 3 different things and you waited for the one for your son to come to you. And because a lot of times we don't give our kids the space, or we don't give them the okay to take your time.